Welcome to Adding Fuel to the Hire, a podcast for hiring managers and job seekers across all types of dealerships. With over 20 years collective recruitment experience, Rowan, Tony and Phil draw upon their knowledge to help you navigate through the recruitment and job hunt process. For more information, head to our website, addingfueltothehire.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Adding Fuel to the Hire. My name's Tony Flynn. I'll be your host for this week, and with me is Phil Lysader. How are you, Phil?
Good, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So today's topic, it's going to be a difficult one to, I suppose, cover off on in 20 to 30 minutes, but because there is so much to it.
Yes.
But just broadly speaking, we're going to be talking about retaining staff/staff retention. Mm-hmm. And yeah, many factors that go into that, little tips and tricks to increase your staff retention. And yeah, just everything that we can we, I suppose, summarize in such a short period of time. But I suppose first and foremost, for most people realize that staff retention is important for the obvious reason of the cost of not getting it right. Yeah. Losing staff consistently, having to rehire. You've got job ads, recruiters' times, outsourced recruitment fees, training, the lack of productivity you get out of a new employee. There's so many, I suppose, obvious and hidden costs to getting your retention wrong. And so you want to obviously employ people that are the highest caliber candidates you can find and then keep them happy for as long as you possibly can. Yeah. So that's, I suppose, the key points to staff retention and why it's important. But I suppose to start the conversation, we need to understand, well, what is good staff retention, what is bad? And the only way you can really cover that off on is by understanding what the average job tenure is for people within Australia. Yeah. And find out whether your averages as a company, do they sit above or below that? Yeah. And then you'll know whether you need a lot of help or a little help, or if you're doing a good job. So we've talked about in other episodes, but there was a Department of Employment survey in 2019. So it is as relevant as we can get for this topic, but it goes through and basically explains the average tenure for each age bracket within Australia. So I suppose unsurprisingly, the younger they are, the less they stick around, and as you get older, the longer the average tenure is. But as the under 25 categories, the average job tenure was 1 year and 8 months. 25 to 35 year olds, it was 2 years to 8 months. 2 years and 8 months, I should say. 35 to 44-year-olds was 4 years, and 45 plus was 6 years and 8 months. Yeah. So as we discussed in other episodes, it's clearly that that 45 plus one, that's just a different era, a different demographic of people where loyalty was seen to be just how long did you stick around with your current employer? Yeah. And people were comfortable. Whereas now I think a lot of the modern generation, it's all about learning new skills. It's that whole generation of instant gratification. It's I want to be learning. I want to be continually getting better. If I'm not feeling like I'm moving forward, then I don't want to stick around. Yeah, that's right. So I suppose you have to understand first and foremost what the averages are, find out where your staff sit in that age bracket, and then determine whether or not you're performing well or correct. If you're not. Like if you're churning people out every 12 months, then that's obvious, you've got a problem. But I think, a lot of companies will have, staff leaving every 3 years and think that they've got a serious retention problem. But you look at that and it's actually around the industry average. So
pretty much average. It's not too bad.
So it's not great. Obviously you want, you can always do better, but you're probably not going as bad as what you think.
That's right.
But there's always room to improve. And I suppose with all those age categories put together, the average tenure was 3 years and 4 months in last year's survey. So it's probably a lot lower than most people recognise.
That's right. Yeah. I think we need to adjust our, and we've talked about this before, but just our expectations of what a loyal employee looks like.
Yeah, exactly right. And I suppose with that background information, you can go into this conversation thinking, well, my goal is to get every employee or as many employees as possible up to a 5-year average. Now that you know what the average is, 5 years is almost 2 years greater than the average across Australia. So let's get everyone to 5 years. Yeah. So that should be your goal moving into this. Obviously, it depends. If you've got an average tenure of 1 year, well, then you've got some serious serious improvement to be made, and you might just want to get to the actual average of 3 years, 4 months.
Yeah.
But, if you're already close there, well, then let's try and stretch it out and get better.
That's right.
But I suppose first and foremost, the most important or obvious thing that's discussed when talking about retaining staff is a company's culture. It's a word that's probably been overused, I think, over the last 5 to 10 years. I think culture became really prominent about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But what, I suppose to you, Phil, what does culture mean? I know every company has a different version of culture, but what does it mean to you?
I think, look, culture is actually really tough to define in the workplace. To me personally, it's the feel of how work gets done there on a day-to-day basis. That's what it is to me. To me, it's about what's our culture around working, essentially. Are we all people who, is this a culture where everyone is just expected to work 12 hours a day and you're meant to work a few hours on the weekend and, you don't expect to get paid for that?
Yeah.
Or do we have a culture of, well, if you want me to do anything more than the bare minimum, you're going to have to pay me?
Yeah.
And it extends to different areas as well. Do we have a culture of team spirit? Do when there's a problem, does the team go, all right, let's get together and think about what we can do here? Yeah. Or does the team go, all right, well, I reckon I have got a good idea, and everyone else is a bit, how you going? So I might just go to the manager and take on it myself. So to me personally, culture is about how you operate on a day-to-day basis in the business.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point is because the word was so overused, and I think it became like a catchword for so many different things.
Yeah.
There's so many companies out there. We're lucky in the dealership industries, we're not really susceptible to this, but there's a lot of, IT marketing, kind of those hip young tech companies. They, I suppose, misinterpret the word culture for a ping pong table.
A pool table and a ping pong table is not culture.
No.
It's just a pool table and a ping pong table.
Exactly. Your company or your staff can feel just as depressed working for you, or just as little, or not listened to.
Yeah.
After their game of ping pong at lunch.
Yeah, it might be fun, and it probably is. I'm not going to doubt that.
Yeah.
So it probably is really fun to do that at lunch. But if you don't like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, the reality is you're probably not going to stick around because you don't like what you're doing for the remaining 7 hours in the day.
Yeah, exactly. So the point there is that culture is far bigger than just the perks or the fun little things that you might see companies doing. Culture goes far deeper than that. It's about how people, as Phil said, it's how people feel day to day in their job, how it impacts, how does that working environment impact their ability to perform their job?
Yeah.
Is it a culture of lifting people up and increasing performance, or is it a culture of dragging people down? That's really the key point there. But the first tip around culture, because there's no single way to do this or get it right, but you need to have somebody that makes it their job to keep the leaders of the business accountable.
Yep.
It's really easy for the owners or the DP or whatever to set a standard and say, right, this is the standard, and have everyone to buy into that. But if your leaders on a day-to-day, whether it's your service manager, parts manager, sales managers, these types of leaders that are doing that day-to-day person management, if they're not following, that standard that's being set or agreed to at a company-wide level, well, then your standards aren't going to be there.
Yeah.
And, your culture is going to fall away to the wayside really quickly.
Correct.
Like, you might have a great parts manager, a great sales manager, but your service department might have a horrific culture compared to the rest of the company. So you need to have that one person that's responsible for making sure everything is ticking along and everyone's buying into that, and all the leaders are accountable.
Yeah. And you need people to buy into it.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just say, all right, so this is this new person, they're going to be the people and culture manager, and they're going to do people and culture things.
Yeah.
You really need them to be respected, and you need all the department heads to buy into it. If you don't, then that people and culture manager is going to have a very, very difficult job. Trying to get everyone to embrace whatever it is you're trying to do through your values and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And we understand most dealerships don't have room in the budget to have a sole person responsible for that, a people and culture manager, as we've seen in other industries.
Yeah.
But you can give that title to someone, and run two separate titles for them It might not be their official title, but at least everyone within the business knows that all things people and culture, it's their responsibility. So the buck stops with them. They make sure the leaders are accountable. They're
Correct.
holding meetings to make sure the business goals are being upheld throughout the year, or the departments are working in unison with each other. There's a lot of communication issues between service and parts departments historically. So that person would be, I suppose, the pivot point throughout the business to make sure that it's all ticking along and working smoothly. So easy place to start is just making someone responsible for that, to lead the way and set the standard. The second thing that comes straight after culture is communication. I think the easiest way to lose staff members is to just not talk to them and not communicate with them. It is, I suppose, been a really big shift. You go back 20, 30, 40 years, there's that mentality of, we're the owners, we're the boss. We're not going to disclose any of this information to our employees. It's not for them to know. And they're just left in the dark. And it was at a time where, there weren't many jobs on offer. So you just kind of stuck to it. And, we see here, it's, people generationally speaking would stick around for 7, 8, 9 years. So you get away with it. Now, if you've got turnover averaging, 1 to 3 years for younger people, you need to communicate to them, because if they, they're left in the dark, they don't feel like they know the company's vision, they're not, they're not buying into where the business is going. Well, they're just going to leave and go elsewhere. If they'll, if no one's talking to them, they don't know if they're doing a good job. Well, they're going to go, well, I'm going to leave.
Correct.
I don't know what's going on. A good example, my brother-in-law has actually just recently started an apprenticeship with a dealer. I won't name who. And he's about 4 months in from memory. And I caught up with him on the weekend, and he was talking, and he was really unsure with how it was all going. Not too sure, how's it going? I'm enjoying it, but I don't know if they're happy with me. I haven't got any feedback. I haven't really heard anything. I encouraged him to give them a call and just say, look, let me know. Like outside of hours, just something really casual. Just ask your manager, how do you think I'm going? He gave him a call, I think that afternoon on Sunday, and you're going really well. We're really happy with you. Couldn't be happier, etc. And so he's gone into work on Monday just thinking, oh, you beauty, this is awesome.
This is awesome.
So, his attitude and everything's just lifted through the roof. Whereas otherwise, if he was kept in the dark, there's every chance he could jump on Seek and start looking elsewhere.
Exactly. And it's easy once you're on Seek and you've found something that looks half decent, and you get that feeling from a new employer potentially that, where you're feeling like, I think they're appreciating me more, then you're gone.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly. So I suppose a couple of tips that we've got around communication, which I'm sure as a whole the dealership industry is far behind other industries on, is I suppose instant messaging and online communication boards. So there's different programs you can use, Microsoft Teams, Slack. They're probably the two most famous ones. There's even Facebook for Business if you want a cheap solution that doesn't cost any money. But basically all these are instant messaging boards, like what most people use anyway through Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and those types of things, but set up for a company. You can have different teams, I suppose, within the actual the platform itself. So you can have parts department, service department, sales department, senior managers, that kind of thing. And it just provides a platform for people to communicate with each other really quickly and simply. I think the biggest benefit we saw at a previous role of mine when we brought in something like this was it pulled so much of the crap, so to speak, that was in emails away, because that all went into instant messaging, and you can set your notifications around it so you're not, wasting your time or whatever. But it pulled a lot of rubbish out of internal communication in emails. And so I know a lot of staff were growing angry because people weren't responding to emails. We pulled all that away from emails, and suddenly communication improved because it was in instant messaging. It was a format that people know you have to respond to quickly. And actually, you can see if people have read it, those sorts of things. So, it improved culture significantly because we had so many issues where people were just, sending emails and never hearing back. Because there was so much junk in there. So it cleans that up massively.
It works really well for any type of service industry. So whether that's a recruitment company or a car dealership or a truck dealership, the idea is to really take all internal communications and move it away from emails, so that when you open your emails, a lot of it is going to be client focused. A lot of it's going to be external people emailing you. It gives a nice breakup. And it makes sure that internally, when you're at work within your business, everyone communicates really, really quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And it opens up so many different channels of communication. Like if you've got, I suppose, a parts department channel going and, you know, someone comes in and they've got an inquiry from someone and someone else is busy, you can punch out a message in that pretty quickly and say, you know, I've got this client of yours that's in here, they're looking for this, what do you usually do? And, you know, because it's in writing, it's being consistent, everyone can see it, people will pick up things that aren't necessarily pertaining to them at the time. And then in the future, when it does become an issue for them, they've seen it, they understand it, they know.
That's right.
Right, this is what the client likes. I've seen this before. I've seen Phil and Rowan messaging about it. I know exactly what to do. So
Correct.
It improves on so many levels.
That's right.
The next one is KPIs, key performance indicators, and incentivizing.
Yeah.
It's a thing that is probably not as common in the dealership industry as what it should be. There's some dealers that do it really well, particularly around the service department.
Yeah.
And sales targets are obvious ones for salesmen and parts interpreters. But as a whole, they should really be in place for just about every single role.
Yeah.
Not necessarily always incentivizing around them. Sometimes companies just can't afford to, but at the very least, you need KPIs in place so people know, you know, am I performing well? Am I performing poorly?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I need a
it's a good way of getting some self-indication. You know, I'm on track. This is what I'm, these are the numbers I should be hitting. And, I'm actually hitting way above that, or, I'm sort of close to it, but not quite there. Maybe I should talk to my manager about it. KPIs I always find have a bit of a negative connotation to them.
Definitely.
It's like, all right, if I don't hit these numbers, I'm fired.
Yeah. And I think that was largely because when they first came in, that was the kind of thought process behind them. It was, 10 or so years ago, they came in pretty commonplace as a way to, well, if people don't reach these KPIs, that's your ticket to fire them.
Yeah.
Whereas now I think we need to spin that conversation and go, well, actually, no, KPIs are going to be used as a way to incentivize you and to motivate you. And if you hit these targets, then we're going to give you more money because we've made more money.
That's right. Yeah. And do it, try and create KPIs around what that employee can actually control. I know a lot of recruitment companies do this where they say you've got to be on the phone to a client for X minutes a day. They can't control that. Like if the conversation's at an end after 2 minutes and you're meant to be on the phone in total for 60 minutes to clients throughout that day, then you're just dragging out conversations that don't need to be dragged out. And you're just for the sake of you hitting your numbers.
Yeah.
I've even heard of stuff like, you've got to be on the phone 6 out of 8 hours a day or something like that.
Yeah.
And so the way they track that is by looking at the phone bills essentially from the telecom. And I've heard stories of people who said, I just call Telstra and just stay on hold.
Yeah.
So, it looks like I'm doing something on the phone bill at the end of the month, but I'm not actually doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So your KPI needs to be around what's actually going to bring a return for the business and what's going to motivate them.
Yeah.
It needs to be, KPIs need to be far more about the carrot than the stick.
Yeah.
As soon as it's about the stick, that's when you're going to have that negative connotation around it. And I suppose the other big thing with KPIs, they need to be achievable.
Yeah.
I hear all the time parts interpreters tell me that, they had all these KPIs and sales targets, but no one ever in the history of the business reached them.
Hit them, yeah.
Or, one person may have reached them 5 years ago, but no one's ever reached it since.
Yeah.
So if they're not actually achievable and people aren't regularly achieving them, then they're not going to motivate anyone because people are just going into it being like, oh, another month of an impossible target.
Yeah, not just that, but then you're constantly feeling like you're failing.
Yeah.
You constantly feel like you're just doing the wrong thing and you're like, oh, okay, I'll probably got to get fired because, I'm not going to hit those numbers. So, and sometimes I feel like, people set those targets because they sort of want to be like, oh, okay, well, we've set targets for you. You'll get money if you hit them. Yeah. No one's ever hit them before, but, if you do, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Knowing full well, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. In that situation, having them is doing more damage than if you didn't have them at all because it's just saying, well, you know what? This company's so out of touch, they have no idea of what's actually achievable.
Yeah.
So, when you're sitting down, you're setting your KPIs as a starting point, you need to actually do research for 3 to 6 months and find out what the average is.
Yeah.
Without anything, without actually knowing or without the staff knowing that they're being, essentially used as guinea pigs at the time, for a better word. It needs to just be, right, without them knowing, we're going to go through, we're going to find out, how many ROs this service advisors or these service advisors are getting through a day, what's achievable, what's not.
Yeah.
And then set KPIs around that.
Yeah.
Once you know what's looking good and what's not.
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people before who've, they applied for a job. I talked them through the job. I'm like, look, salary is 100K plus bonuses. The bonuses is probably about 10 to 15% of your base salary if you hit your KPIs. And they go, oh, all right, so it's 100K.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah.
I've heard that before, and it's like, oh, what do you mean? And they always have some story about how, yeah, look, I took a role. It was lower in salary, but they said the incentives would be really, really good, and no one ever hit them. So, you essentially just took a 40% pay cut or whatever. Like it definitely happens.
Oh, 100%. So, yeah, they have to be achievable, and you have to be willing to actually fork out the money for when they do it. So, you have to make sure they're tailored in a way that you're happy to give out that money because they have gone above and beyond and, and brought in more than what you'd ordinarily expect. But another key point that's always overlooked in most, not just dealerships, but companies as a whole, when it comes to staff retention is internal promoting.
Yeah.
If you have a culture of every time you have a position come up, in a management position of just outsourcing and looking elsewhere, then that's going to set a culture for anyone else left in the business of, well, what is the point of sticking around and striving here because I'm never going to get promoted?
Correct.
If you create this culture of, the last parts manager, the last service manager, the last sales manager, all were internal promotions from those departments, well, that sets a standard for all those remaining parts, interpreters, service advisors, techs, whatever it is, to go, right, if I knuckle down and I hit these targets and I consistently perform well, I'm going to be the next in line.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that is the reason why if you ever see on Seek or any other job board for that matter, where anyone advertises a job and they say, why the role is being advertised and it has that little line in there of due to an internal promotion, that's a big tick for so many people because they go, all right, so they clearly promote internally and they're clearly happy to invest in their staff. And if I work hard and if I put in the hours, I will get the reward out of it, not just financially, not just, get a 5% pay rise every few years, but I'm actually going to progress in my career.
Yeah.
And you're going to get more people apply who genuinely want to be there for the long run.
Oh, exactly. And that's the thing. Like you might have an employee that has the best attitude and just no matter what task you've given them, they've just, over the last few years, they've just run with it. They've kicked goals. They are just consistently a high performer.
Yeah.
And a role comes up and it might be a little bit left field for them. And you think they probably don't have the technical knowledge or they don't have this particular thing that we'd like. But boy, their attitude is great.
Yeah.
Give them a go.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, that's fine. You can shift them back into their old position or another position. But attitude is 90% of the battle.
Yeah.
And if you've got someone internally that has runs on the board and they've done well, look for a way to promote them.
Yeah.
It will create such a good culture within the business. And
correct.
Regardless, as long as they've got the support there, they'll be able to pick it up.
Yeah.
And with the attitude and everything that they've got and they've proven, then you're not taking a risk for bringing someone out from
not just that, but you got to keep in mind if they're wanting to take a step up and you're not offering them that step up, someone else will.
Exactly.
And then they're gone. Then you've definitely lost them.
Yeah, well, I was just going to, summarising on all that, we doing a bit of research for this episode beforehand. We came across a report from 2019 again from the Australian Business Insider, and they were interviewing, I think it was about 1,000 people about, the reason that they would quit their job.
Yeah.
And just putting together a list of the top 5 to 10 reasons. And I suppose maybe surprising to a lot of people that number 2 on the list was a lack of career progression, career growth. And obviously number 1 was lower pay. So, it's definitely in the forefront of so many people's minds now, particularly the younger generation. They want to learn, they want to develop, they want to keep moving forward. So
for sure,
it is a huge one. So
and if you can offer them that path, you need to, to keep them.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose the last key point to staff retention is performance management. Gone are the days if you're listening to this and you perform a yearly performance review, and that's the only kind of management that you have with your employees, then you're severely outdated. It's very much in the past.
Yeah.
There was a time where you'd barely talk to your staff. You'd perform one review once a year, then go, right,
There's your letter.
I'll talk to you next year. And that was it. Whereas now it's moved, with communication levels and everything, the expectations for the younger generations, instant gratification. These are people that have only ever grown up with the internet. So they're used to getting things whenever they want to. And there's a lot of negative connotations towards that. But in the workplace, scenario, that means that when they want feedback now, they don't want to wait 9 months. And as an employer, you don't want to wait 9 months because by then the damage is done. You want to hit the nail on the head. So what you want to do is perform, monthly one-on-one chats with them. That's where you sit down with them and you go through every month at a particular time, go through their performance, how you've perceived their performance, the impact on the business, and steps from here of how they can improve, put together a plan of how they can move forward, and then keep moving forward from there and constantly communicate with them throughout the month. You're not just giving them that month and going, right, see you next month.
Yeah.
It's checking in with them constantly. How are you going? How are you finding things? What are you struggling with? How can we help you?
That's right.
That sort of thing. And most good employees will thrive because they like the appraisal. But the hidden gem to this is that bad employees will generally quit without the need to fire them and, open yourselves up to legal issues because they don't like the attention and spotlight on them.
Yeah.
If they're going to that monthly review every month and it's just negative,
correct,
they're going to go, I probably should just move on from here.
Yeah.
I can't hide here very well.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I've there's a webinar that we've put together already with a whole bunch of information around this in a lot more detail. If you are interested in that, just do reach out with our contact details below in the show notes because there's so much more information we can go into this. Unfortunately, due to time restraints, we can't. But particularly around performance management and KPIs and that sort of thing, there's a whole bunch of information we can offer you. So do reach out if you have any other questions. Otherwise, if you do have other ideas, tips, tricks, topics that you want us to discuss, please shoot us an email on the contact details below. Otherwise, we'll be back next week for another episode. And thank you for listening.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Adding Fuel to the Hire. If you have any questions or you'd like to hear us talk about a particular topic, why not send us an email at podcast@addingfueltothehire.com. If you like what we do and would like to support our podcast, please leave a review on your podcasting app of choice. For further information, please visit our website, addingfueltothehire.com.